YouTube, the tier list is here, and it is top tier. Anyway, this is my look on the tier list before the KC Cup. Now, this is 1 month before. We will do another one right before the KC Cup, but this is my personal look on the tier list. What I think is meta and what the best decks are. Feel free to look at other tier lists as well. They're excellent. Team K has got their own. They're fantastic. I'll again shout them out here. If you haven't checked them out, I have a shout out in my other video for them. Duel Links Meta has their top PPC, who has their own look at the tier list in some of the Japanese communities, such as like their tournaments over there, such as like the Sword and Weekly and the Suicide Weekly. They have their own outlook on the tier list as well. So I encourage you to go look at everybody's opinion. But this is right now mine. I will also leave a link to the Discord so you can join this, and I'm going to update the Discord based on this tier list. But let's go over what exactly is top tier right now. Alright, so right now we have a tier list, which is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, rogue, and then legend memes or decks that you may see on the legend ladder once or twice. Gone your way to COG, but they're not going to be really competitively viable. Rogue decks are the decks that, you know, are somewhat competitively viable, but they hang around. You see maybe 1 or 2 of them around, but they do have the power to beat meta decks. You know, there are, like, even the legend memes can beat meta decks if you go first and under the right circumstance. If the clock strikes twice at midnight, it can win. You know, these are decks that can win twice if the clock strikes twice at midnight, but I would not bring them into KC Cups. Like, legend memes I would not be bringing into KC Cups stage 2 if you want to do really well competitively. Rogue decks can help you do well competitively. Sometimes a rogue deck can be the best choice for a KC Cup if you're a really good pilot on it. So rogue decks could be rogue for a bunch of reasons. 1, it could be a rogue deck because it's very expensive and not a lot of people have it. 2, it could be a rogue deck because it struggles against certain matchups, but it dominates 1 or 2 particular matchups, which makes it competitively viable. And 3, it could be rogue just because it's really expensive and not a lot of people have it. So because of that, you haven't seen the tournament success that the deck should be having, and it's kind of hidden, which makes it a very dangerous deck at that point. And tier 3 decks are decks that aren't played a ton, but are very competitively viable for one reason or another. Generally are not tier 2 or 1 because they have a weakness, either inconsistency or bad matchups. And then the tier 2 and tier 1 decks are the best decks in the format. Tier 2 just, you know, a little bit weaker than tier 1, but that's pretty much how it goes, slots in tier wise. Alright, so anyway, let's start out with the legend. Let's start out, and we're going to go up and down the list here. Some of these decks are like old and, you know, don't really get a spot on the list, but, you know, are here anyway just because they are. Alright, Chronomaly is, it's close to being low-end rogue. I'm going to put this on the lowest end of the rogue. It's not played a lot, but it has the power of a low-end rogue, high-end legend meme. Chronomaly can put out 2v minus turn 1, which in some realm of the word can be enough to win certain meta matchups. I wouldn't look at this deck and say, hey, this deck is really, really good right now, because it's not. It's like a low-end rogue deck and maybe even like a high-end legend meme. It's like that close. But in some case and scenario, it can win. I wouldn't bring this seriously into a KC Cup. You know, you could easily get like around 20-30k with this if you really try hard enough. But it's not a really good competitive deck. I would leave Chronomaly on the bottom end of the rogue tier list. It's not, it can do things turn 1, but its turn 2 is like shakier than anything else. I think it's a bit on the shakier side, but you know, there is, you know, it still lacks in my opinion compared to what other decks can do. Okay, next is DDD. DDD is a legend meme. DDD is not good. It loses hard to Valor on Coach King Giant Trainer. It also doesn't really do anything turn 1 that's really, really good, reliably. The deck just needs a better turn 1. It really needs help from some of the other support that we just do not have in the game. So, you know, taking that into consideration, unfortunately, it's just not top tier at the moment. It's not even close. It's a legend meme. It's like even way down on the legend memes, I would say, like mid-legend meme. So, you know, it's not really good. Synchrons are pure Synchron. This is not Ursa Synchron. Is a rogue to legend meme deck. I would say on the highest end of Legend Meme. I don't want to really discount this deck because it still can do things turn 1. But again, like turn 2, it just dies to disruption, and that's the problem with the deck. If you play with Mech Knights, it does become a little bit stronger, so maybe like on the lowest of the Rogue. But then you have to rely on drawing Mech Knights, and it's just not as consistent at doing that. It's not the #1 deck I would choose to play in the KC Cup, but you know, it's great in the right player's hands. I know Luke Tyler, my boy, was doing really, really well with this a few KC Cups ago. But yeah, lowest end of the Legend, lowest end of the Rogue or Legend Meme, and I would say right now, I don't think it's one of the better decks. Next we have Onomat. Onomat is a Legend Meme, okay? It is above DDD, but it is a Legend Meme. The deck turn 1 has a very powerful turn 1, but turn 2 it very easily loses to disruption. Turn 1, you can end on like Utopia Leo Ray plus a Dweller plus a back row, which is really, really strong in the right hand. However, turn 2, if you get disrupted, then your hand isn't looking so good, and you're looking to lose more duels than you win. So overall, I would say because of that theory is nothing more than a Legend Meme. Next, we have Dark Magician, and this is probably even, I don't know, right there with DDD as far as being a Legend Meme. Again, this is something you will see commonly on the ladder. This is a deck that will commonly see play on the ladder, but it is not a deck that is, you know, good, in my opinion, because it doesn't have a reliable turn 1, and it doesn't really, you know, scare too many decks into what, you know, can be done and what can't be done, you know, as far as, you know, what could, you know, what scares people and what doesn't. And your best turn 1 is generally ending on, you know, 1 or 2 Dark Magicians and some amount of back row, but, you know, that's not reliable. Like, your plays aren't reliable in that deck, and because of that, is nothing more than a Legend Meme. Next is, this is meant to be Code Talker, but I'm changing this up to, I'm going to change this up to Clock, and I'm going to put this on, like, the lowest end of Rogue, maybe. Like, really low end Rogue, because Clock is a decent deck. It does have some turn 2 potential. It can run hand traps, you can run lands. Turn 1, you can end up Borload plus a back row. So, realistically, the deck is okay. It's not really amazing. It's not, it's a little bit unreliable, but overall, like, you do have some OTK potential. There are some builds that run Honeybot to make your Clock become completely untargetable, which is really cool. I think overall this deck gets a little bit slept on, so I'm going to leave it at the low end Rogue, but excuse me. But right now, it's not that great of a deck, in my opinion. Alright. Rocket. Now, Rocket, I know a lot of people are going to hate on me for saying this, but I think Rocket is at the highest end of Rogue. I don't think Rocket is top tier right now. I don't think it's top tier. If anything, it can be tier 3. I could see where it would be the low end of tier 3. But I think Rocket struggles into a lot of different matchups going second. That's its primary problem. Like going second against Constellar, it is a problematic thing. It going second against Ubel, first of all, going first or second is a really bad matchup for it. That being in the medic also gives an issue. So like those are two like iffy matchups right off the bat. Ubel's a bad matchup, but Constellar is kind of iffy depending on whether you go first or second. Other than that, I just feel like the turn 1s of what other decks do in the meta are just superior to what Rocket do right now. That's not to say that Rocket's a bad deck. It's a good deck. It's just that right now, I think it struggles. I don't think it does more than what other decks are doing right now. But I could see the argument of someone putting it at tier 3 because it's still a relatively strong deck overall. And its turn 1 is very, very dangerous. And in a good pilot's hand, the deck is great. And one card that really helps blow up matchups is Rapid Trigger. Rapid Trigger is an insane card going second. So you do have that going for you. And the boot sector summoning is very good. However, I still think in the top cut areas, experienced player versus experienced player, I think it's going to struggle to get a consistent win rate at the higher levels. So I think it could be a deck that can climb you fast early on, but I think at the higher levels it might struggle because the more Constellars that you end up seeing would be harder for Rocket to deal with, and the Ubel, I don't know if it's going to be as popular at a higher level because again, that's also a struggle into Constellar. So yeah, I see Rocket as either a tier 3 deck or a rogue deck. Right now I have it at high-end Rogue, the highest of Rogue decks. Like, it could easily go into tier 3. You know, I might shift it to tier 3 at any minute, so, but, you know, I don't think it's the most top tier of decks at the moment. I know some people may disagree with me, but that's personally what I feel. I think it's either a tier 3 or Rogue deck. I don't think it's higher than that. If U-Bell gets cut out of the meta, then yeah, then I could definitely see where, you know, Rocket could slide up in the meta to tier 2 and whatnot. But right now, I think it's like a tier 3 deck. Alright, Odd Eyes Orcus, I'm not even going to discuss this. This is a complete legend meme. It's unplayable. It's even below legend meme because the deck is incredibly dead. Ray Raptor again is another legend meme. This deck has to go first in order to do anything. When it goes first, you can make a very nasty board. But again, like now the droplets in the meta, there are things that might be able to break whatever they do. But again, like I said, you have to go first, otherwise you're just losing with the deck. So it's like a complete meme. Goki, again, another dead deck. It's a legend meme. Might appear in the ladder because somebody might be free to play, and that might be the deck they have, or just a returning player to the game overall. You know, and then that's where that comes from. And then overall, it's just where it is at the moment. It's not really a good deck at the moment. Alright, next we have Destiny Hero. And Destiny Hero I have as a rogue deck. With Malicious coming off as limit 3, I think it's a deck that should develop some kind of interest. Because the deck has, I think, out of all the meta decks in the meta, right up there with Constellar, I would guess, but even like the Hero can do a little bit better. They have the easiest access to Excite on Night. And having access to Excite on Night going second is very frightening. And also, the deck can really create some very dangerous turn ones. Very reliable at doing that. Just draw like 2 back row and a fusion play. So I think overall, I think Destiny Hero is a very solid rogue deck. I think that what holds it back is that I think against some of the like decks like Tenyi. That's another thing with Rocket. That just brings up another point why I forgot. I meant to bring up with Rocket. That's another reason why I have it in Rogue, because I think it also has a bad Tenyi matchup as well. So like you're already like on the losing end of like 3, bad to iffy matchups. But Destiny Hero is, one of those decks that I think will lose going second to Tenyi. I think it will lose going second to potentially Infinitrack, because I think that a lot of the destruction it wants to do is with popping or swinging over things. So, I think overall, like, Citadel might be a problem for the deck. Well, you can get up to 31, I guess, but, like, I don't think it can outride Makata going second. I don't think that they're that fast enough, unless they have the right hand. But overall, it's a rogue deck. It's one that shouldn't be too slept on. I think it's a good deck overall. And it's one that I would be very interested in cogging with in the future. So we're going to keep this at Rogue. I think this is a decent choice for the KC Cup. Not as good as Rocket, but decently in there, I think. Next, we have Orcus, which is completely unplayable. I'm not going to... Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say like a highest end of Legend memes. Orcus is Orcus. There's always the threat of combo. I would say that maybe... Oh, I don't want to completely erase it. If we're going to include Gandora into this... If I include Gandora into this, I'm going to put this in Rogue. I don't think Gandora should be completely slept on. I think, like, it's still, somewhat of a decent deck. Maybe, like... But I still think, like I said, on the lowest end of Rogues, because it's not at the same power level as it was before. But... I can't put Gandora into Legend memes because it's a stronger deck than that. It can win, and it does have ways of getting there. So we'll leave Gandora in Rogue right now, in the lower end of Rogue. But, other than that, that's why Orcus is in the lower end of Rogue, specifically because of Gandora. Odd Eyes is dead with the skill. Resonator's another Legend meme. It's not Rogue at this point. It has a really good turn 1, but it's another one of those decks with a really good turn 1, but lacking on turn 2. Sulfur Core, completely dead. Not even worth talking about at this point. So I'm not going to even discuss about it. Speedroid is one of those decks at the high end of Rogue. And I'm going to put it ahead of Destiny Hero, and I'm going to put it right there with Rocket. Speedroid has been having a lot of success in tournaments, and the best player I've ever seen on Speedroid is my boy Mastercards. He is fantastic on the deck, but there have been some players really having success with it in tournament play. The deck is a solid deck because this deck is almost tier 3, honestly. Like, this and Rocket could jump up there, because I honestly feel that the deck it literally does enough going second with the right and going first, that it could be a tier deck. And I say tier 3 in a really good pilot's hand. So like MasterCards. If you're an excellent pilot on this deck, that is probably a tier deck. It will play like a tier deck because it's that good in that good of a pilot's hand. That being said, going up against 4 disruptions going second, it's going to be hard. So it's not as good as something like Live Twin, Constellar. You're going to still have those iffiness going second unless you have like the right hands. But being a good pilot on the deck and knowing the lines is going to be huge for playing this deck. Alright, I have no idea what Super Poly is representing, so I'm not going to even look at that. Next, we are going to put our first tier deck on here, and that is S-Force. And I believe that this is a tier 3 deck, but maybe even tier 2. Okay, I think it's like, now I'm a fan of S-Force. I'm not, I think that the deck is arguably like a tier 2 deck at this point. It's won quite a few amount of tournaments from Soliman, and some other participants as well have done really, really well on this, like on the lower end of tier 2. The deck is very, very strong. Going first, obviously. Yeah, so on the lower end, I would say on like the lower to mid end of tier 2. No, I would say like on the mid end. I'd say on the mid to higher end of tier 2 S-Forces. Yeah, S-Force is a really good deck going first, but I think it can also play going second as well, depending on whether you open up Chase or open up, open up your Showdown or your extension via Reinforced Truth. The deck is pretty dang strong. Probably like in the mid end of tier 2. That's where I would put S-Force. But yeah, it is a good deck, and it definitely expected to be seeing some play in the KC Cup. Yeah. Alright, Phantom Knight is a meme. It's not great. Maybe a high-end Legend meme. Just because it can put out Requiem some back row turn 1. It can play decently turn 2. So I would say that Phantom Knight may be a high-end of Legend meme. Water Exceed is, again, another Legend meme. Not going to really discuss this too much. Trickstar is a rogue deck. It's behind Destiny Hero, I feel. In a good pilot's hands, this deck will do well. It actually counters Live Twin pretty dang well. And because of that, it's probably going to remain in rogue. It's the best counter to Live Twin in the game. And Live Twin is one of the best decks in the meta at this moment. So, because of that, it will hang around there a bit. Constellar. The problem is, Dark Hole gimmick doesn't work, but you do have Valor and Cumro to win that matchup. So with that being said, it still can win it, but going second into Constellar is a pain in the neck. Because none of your cards, if you don't draw Valor or Crow, none of your cards do anything against Omega. IDP is weak in the matchup, and Dark Hole is not going to help you win. So you need to see Valor and Crow to win. That being said, Trickstar is a low rogue deck, because I don't think it really does, other than Live Twin, doesn't really have any favorable matchups going in the meta, and I don't think U-Bell really is good for it either. So, I'm gonna put this in low end rogue, and I don't think and it has a very bad 10-year matchup too. So definitely mid to low rogue. Gearfried, Amazement Gearfried is a high end, is a tier 3 deck with Live Twin in it. Gearfried with Live Twin is very good. This is the Live Twin version, not the, not the blah blah, not the other versions. Okay, it could be higher. I could easily jump this to tier 2, honestly, and then maybe I will actually do that. But Amazement Gearfried Live Twin is very strong because you have the ability to get a negate going turn 1, and then also being able to throw out some, amounts of disruption as well. Having that negate and that pop, and then turn 2 using Gearfried as an extender. And the fact that they could also potentially adjust the list post-selection box also has it favored going to 2. So I'd say probably the lower end of tier 2, but it's definitely a deck that should be watched out for, that variant of Live Twin. Medolce is nothing more than a rogue meme. I know Sapinine's going to kill me for this, but it is in Quantum, but it is a rogue. And maybe a lowest end of rogue deck because it can sack you at any point, and the deck could just win. Maybe if you play 500 games, the deck will figure out a way to win. I don't know. Ursardic is a rogue deck. Now, Ursa Synchron. Now, again, this is a tier 3 deck in Darkland's hands because apparently Darkland can draw Radiation. If you can draw Radiation, this is the top tier deck. And if you can't draw Radiation, then this deck goes to crap really fast. It's turn 1 with radiation. If you go first with radiation, it beats any deck in the game. There's nothing that can really beat that consistently anyway. And the reality is if you don't draw radiation, the deck's power level goes down substantially. But again, if you can manage to draw radiation on a consistent basis, then it is a deck that can be feared at any given point. That being said, I don't think it has the best matchup in the Tenyi, and I also don't think it has the best matchup into some of the other decks that are in the meta, including Machina. I think Machina gets a little bit shaky, but yeah. Next, we have Tenyi, and I think Tenyi is a tier 1 deck. Tenyi is an outstanding deck right now, and in the best pilot's hands, it's even more outstanding. The deck has a good turn 1 and has a really strong turn 2 with Circle to Vessels, and still having access to Circle at 3 is very, very strong. It can play through a good amount of disruption. And I think it can take benefit that IDP may not be the most popular tech right now due to the popularity of Constellar, as my boy Quantum would call it. But yeah, that's where I feel 10 years. It's definitely tier 1. Live Twin is also tier 1. I think that this deck is around tier 1 or real, like low tier 1 or high tier 2. This is pure Live Twin. And the reason why I included it up here and I bumped it up is because of Droplet and Alpha. I think Droplet it makes the deck really, really freaking strong now, because now going second, you have Droplet, which can allow you to play through a certain amount of negates. So now if they try to go Pallades, now you Droplet send off their cost, and then you can negate Pallades, and then you suddenly have a much more interesting turn 2. I also think Alpha the Master of Beasts is really, really good, and the Artifact package could also be a good addition into the Live Twin deck as well. So I think it's definitely near the tier 1 category, if not the low end of tier 1, and not the high end of tier 2, but it's definitely a really good deck, and it's definitely got a nice boost from the selection mod. So yeah, I would definitely put it there. Altergeist I still have as a tier 3 deck, or if not a rogue deck, but it has a good matchup in the U-Bell going second, which I think will be somewhat of a popular deck. Again, I think Constellar can be an issue, Tenyi can be an issue. I'm gonna have to throw this one in Rogue. I'll throw it right there with Rocket, behind Speedroid. I wanted to put it at tier 3, but then again, I'm like, if I'm not putting Rocket there, then what am I doing putting Altergeist there? You know what I mean? I'll bump it up. I'll bump Rocket and Altergeist up. How about that? We'll be a little bit fair here. We'll be a little bit fair on this one. I'll bump Rocket and Altergeist up. But I think that these decks can remain at tier 3 for the time being. But like I said, yeah, tier 3 gets a little bit wishy-washy with the Rogue, but I would definitely include Altergeist with the Rocket standing, because it is an outstanding matchup against Bell. And going first against any deck it can win. Going second against, the only deck I would really fear going second against is probably something like Constellar, because Omega protects against a lot of the back row. But it could go second into some matchups and still do well, or a Goddamn Live Twin, but other than that, it could go second into a few decks and do well. And the best pilots on the deck will do really well. The best pilot, like I said, that I've seen on Altergeist in my career of watching Altergeist gameplay would be Crimson. My boy Crimson Reaper 5. He is fantastic. His knowledge on Altergeist is really, really good. Other amazing pilots are Elsoon, Moister, Giorfio. They are all fantastic pilots on the deck. Well, Moister can play the encyclopedia, but yeah. Crimson is a fantastic pilot on the deck, so you make sure you go follow Crimson Reaper 5 if you want to learn the deck, because he's your guy. Alright, next I have Magiki. Magiki is a very good rogue deck, and I think it's right up there with Magiki Suship, right up there with Speedroid. It is very dangerous because the deck can get through 2 or 3 disruptions going first, as well as having a really good turn 1. But the only issue with it is the bricking problem. It can brick from time to time, which gives it, it puts it in the rogue category. Otherwise, this deck would be tiered. But right then and there, it's definitely puts it in the rogue category for me. But that's where I feel that is right now. Amazement. This is Amazement Live Twin. Pure Amazement Live Twin is a rogue deck without any, other engines. Just because it's Live Twin. But I don't think I think the Amazement version is lost some popularity. Unless you're running Gear Freed as well in it, then Gear Freed kind of bumps it up. If you run Gear Freed Amazement, then it kind of bumps it up. But Pure Amazement Live Twin is weaker on the list, I think, in my opinion. Okay, now next is Shadow. Shadow is an interesting one here because Shadow is like borderline tier 3 rogue. But the problem with Shadow is like the brickiness and Dweller going in Constellar, I would say, is the biggest issue. However, with that being said, I am going to bump Shadow into the lower end of tier 3. I'm going to bump it in the lower end of tier 3 here. Because Shadow, it's like to me, it's on the fence of being like really, really good. I mean, not like really, really rogue, but then at the same time, it does have the upside of being tier 3. And I think it's tier 3 in a strong pilot stance. As a matter of fact, I will bump Speedroid. No, I gotta keep Speedroid here. So overall, I think that, give me 1 second. So overall, I think that, yeah, Shadow is a tier 3 deck. I think it is a very decent deck in the meta. I don't think it's the strongest of decks, but I'm going to leave it at low end tier 3 for now. My Akashi is tier 2, and it is very, very good tier 2 deck. Probably on the higher end of tier 2, even higher than S-Force. The deck is very, very strong. I think it can go through turn 2 Disruption. And I think its turn 1 is very, very defensive, but also very, very good. Yeah. So maybe I'll switch this around. Maybe I'll put S-Force out of it. But overall, it's very, very good. Droplet's also strong in the deck as well. So you definitely don't want to sleep on my Akashi. This deck is quite good. Setting up all those synchros in the grave. You can even go through synchro lines if you wanted to as well. And like end on the level 11 turn 1. So that way if they kill it, then you can float into all your other synchros. So yeah, this deck I really like a lot. My Akashi is very, very good. Cosmo is high rogue, if not low tier 3. I guess I gotta kind of include it here because where Shadow is at the moment. Cosmo is very, 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 you know, it's quite a good deck at the moment. It's quite a good deck, good rogue deck at the moment, tier 3, like low end tier 3 deck, because the deck has a good matchup in the live twin. It has a good matchup in the live twin. It can beat other matchups. The only thing like I said, I worry about is Constellar, because it banishes with Caduceus and then it becomes problematic. But in U-Bell becomes a little bit problematic as well. Maybe at that point I would drop it in the high rogue. Yeah, I might actually take that back and drop it in the high rogue. But it's a high rogue deck. It's definitely close to tier 3, but a high rogue deck. Probably the highest of rogue. Right up there, tied with Speedroid at the moment. Okay, next we have Makata. This is pure Earth Machine, and I think it's tier 1. I honestly think, it's right up there with Tenyi for being the best deck. The reason why, I mean, it has that kind of power. Again, do a lot of people play the deck? No. But overall, the deck has the power level to be tier 1, because I believe that this deck can break Constellar boards. It can break live twin boards. It can break some of the most dangerous boards in the game. The only weakness of it is that it has a terrible matchup in U-Bell. Other than that, if U-Bell doesn't become as popular in the KC Cup, this deck is going to roll. And it is very, very good, and I expect to play it very substantially and main it myself. So you have my backing on that. I'm putting my own on the line here. So I would definitely market it as a really, really good deck in the meta, honestly, right now. I think it does really, really well into a lot of things, and I think the less popular IDP gets, because of Constellar, the more popular this deck is going to get. So yeah, I would definitely include this in the top tier 1 selections. Throw this in a live twin. Okay, next I have Gunkin. Gunkin is a rogue deck, but it is a very, very, very good rogue deck, right up there with Cosmo and Speedroid. This deck is quite strong, and it can catch you off guard if you're not looking for it. The turn 2 is very good. They run techs like MST, Cosmic to blow out the back row. I almost want to put this in tier 3. I honestly do, but like it's so close. Like this deck is so close to being in tier 3. But I'm gonna make a brutal thing. I'm gonna put this at the lowest end of tier 3. This deck is like very good going second. Going first gets a little shaky, but in the right pilot's hands, again, this is like one of those decks that in the right pilot's hands, it's very, 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 very good, honestly. Yeah, I'll keep that here, for sure. Because, like, the turn 2, you have Dreadnought, rank 5, which is really good because it becomes a negate. And you can negate during the main phase or battle phase, which your opponent's battle phase or your main phase, which allows you to negate certain disruption that would try to interrupt you in the main phase from making your plays. So overall, very, very good. And the Magic Key version not far behind it in Rogue. So yeah, very good. Next, Constellar, tier 1. There's not really much to say about this. It's tier 1, borderline high tier 2, right around here. It just, honestly, I'm gonna move Live Twin to higher tier 1 because I think these are kind of in the most same place. But I think these decks are just better than both of them. But overall, that, you know, Constellar is just an outstanding deck. Literally, you have Omega, which just gives them spell and trap protection. It gives matchups like Yubel, Cosmo, Headaches, even Shadow, like Winda can play around. It's like almost tier 1 in my mind. This deck is almost tier 1. I'll even put it back to Live Twin, yeah. But yeah, overall, it's just like really dangerously strong right now. It's just really, really good. Alright, next is Evil Swarm. Evil Swarm to me is a mid-rogue deck. Again, like, the thing with Evil Swarm is if you ever played TCG, you already know this deck can become instant popular if there is a deck that is level 5 dominant, then suddenly this deck comes out of everywhere because then Ophion becomes the best card in the game. You know, but right now it's a mid-rogue deck because it's not going to get much play at all because just doesn't, you know, do anything that any other deck in the meta deck would do. So, because of that, it's a mid-rogue deck. Lunalight, again, is a rogue deck. It is a mid-rogue deck. It's not bad, but it's also not good. It loses to a lot of different things, and I think that Yubel will cause it problems, and I also think that Constellar will cause it problems because Caduceus can just banish the Lunalights. So, with that being said, that becomes an issue with that, and overall, because of that, it's a mid-rogue deck. And also, Live Twin's build still running IDP would cause problems, but Live Twin you should be winning more than that because you are the captain. But Live Twin's favorable, but other than that, like, it's a mid-rogue deck. Alright, next, we have Yubel, and finally, Yubel is, to me, it is high tier 3, if not tier 2. Probably the lower end of tier 2. We have a lot of decks in tier 2, honestly. 2 of these are technically Live Twin variants, but overall, like, Yubel is so annoying, but so strong, too, against certain decks that just can't beat it. And those decks that, like, Rocket and what's another headache matchup for Yubel? Machina, Earth Machine. Maya doesn't have the most outs for it either. It gives them headaches, and it's a problem. Live Twin have a good amount of outs now because you have the artifact outs to deal with Ultimate Nightmare as well. You had outs to that anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference there. But you have Droplet to deal with Neos Wiseman, so that gives you an out. You also have 3 Crackdown in the deck, and you have this ability to steal, so they have outs to it. Caduceus outs it for Constellar. If you don't know why, watch my Battle Phase video. But yeah, this is where I think the meta is right now. I think that Earth Machine is honestly the best deck, right up there with Tenyi. I honestly think that Constellar, Live Twin, Mayakashi are all tier 2, but Constellar's like, hey, I'm knocking on the door of tier 1. These 2 decks at the front are knocking on the door of tier 1. As Force, I don't think it's enough love. I still think it's a tier 2 deck. I think this deck is still good. I probably put Mayakashi out of it, but it is still a tier 2 deck in my opinion. It's still very, very good. Yubel is on the back end of tier 2. Not only because of that, but because its popularity popularity everywhere because it's so accessible. So it's like tier 2 because of that reason as well. But yeah, this is where I think the meta is. If you liked in this video, please like, comment, and sub. Again, we could get a box before stage 2 that might flip all the Sonnet's buttocks, but until then, this is what I think. Okay. Until next time, this is your boy, Sean Matrai. Like, comment, sub, please, please, please. We're almost at 900 subs. Like, comment, sub. We want to get to 1K subs. That's our next goal. Alright? Like, comment, sub. Love you guys. Peace. Bye, YouTube.